proposal in Maryland Heights to build on a floodplain. What happened last night?
Last night they had the first public meeting where the city, they had what they called it a workshop, where a few city bureaucrats, city officials, informed the council about the various proposals they received to develop in this floodplain. And I'm sorry, I give them the credit for having a public meeting, I guess.
Right.
But they didn't really give much information out. I mean, nothing that they said wasn't readily available on the website they put up for the same purpose.
How many people showed up for this public meeting?
I'd say probably right about 50.
Oh, okay. All right, good. So what did we learn? Did we glean anything from this? What did we learn?
Well, I guess if you hadn't read the website, you probably learned some basic information in fairness to Maryland Heights.
Right.
But I guess the key thing we learned is that there's 6 proposals. And the one by Stan Kroenke and Howard Bornstein and sort of that partnership, they call that the Howard Bend Development Proposal.
Oh, how lovely. How quaint.
Right. Well, that's after the levee.
After the levee. Okay. All right. Good.
That protects, I'm doing air quotes on the protects the area.
Right.
So we learned that that's, in their words, a comprehensive proposal, meaning it's sort of the whole developable area.
Okay.
Whereas the other 5 proposals, and this is all on the Maryland Heights, they call it the Maryland Lake District proposal.
Okay.
The other 5 are all smaller, meaning that they could, so sort of those 5 could go together if Maryland Heights chose to, or they could do all 5 of those, or they could do Kroenke's.
Gotcha.
But I don't know if anything will work together. At least that was something that I gleaned from last night.
Did anybody bring up the fact, as you pointed out and taught us, that the TIF reform is coming down the tracks and is going to probably be a part of this discussion?
They did not bring that fact up. In fact, one of the real disappointments to me was that every time they mentioned tax incentives that might be offered or that had been requested, all they did was quote very briefly from the various proposals, saying generically such as, and we will intend to ask for tax increment financing and other tax subsidies, and then give that sort of pro forma language. They didn't give any additional information, which I assume they have, and maybe they don't yet.
Yeah.
But no specifics as to what people would be asking for.
So we don't know how much in tax subsidies they would get for these proposals.
We do not. It's important to point out that 4 of the 6 proposals, including all of the larger ones, have asked for some type of tax subsidy.
Right.
We know no specifics to this point. But the 2 that don't, one is the expansion of the Creve Coeur Airport a little bit, like to expand their runways.
Okay.
So there would be no local subsidies involved with that, whether they wanted them or not.
And that's just sort of cutting the grass on either end of the of the airstrip.
Right. Whatever it might be, there's no local subsidies involved.
Right.
So of all the larger proposals, they're all asking for some type of subsidy. So we need to stress to people that they're asking for tax subsidies to develop in the floodplain, which will be the next step to make flooding worse in our region. Even though they already have a levee built here, I mean, this is 1,800 acres of permeable land that water flows through, the ground that takes it.
Right.
Now they're going to take that water, they're going to, through sewer improvements or however, send it back out into the rivers, back out into the creeks, and during a flood, that's going to go over to St. Charles. That's why the county of St. Charles is so opposed to this proposal.
Right.
And it's just the next step to make our flooding worse, which we've seen over and over and over again over the past 30 years. We spend our own tax dollars, we take our own tax dollars, make flooding worse, and then wonder how the heck we're getting a flood over the New Year's holiday in places that water never went before.
So what the proposals in Maryland Heights basically ask, we'd like tax subsidies so that we could flood different parts of St. Louis.
Right. We'll protect ourselves with this levee as if it's a good thing that the Mother Nature intended for the water to go here.
Right.
So we're going to build a huge levee. So now water is going to go places Mother Nature didn't intend it to go, where people couldn't plan for or couldn't expect.
However, the nice thing is we like to use your tax dollars for it.
Right. And you get to pay for this. And then in the end, when the inevitable next major flood comes, like we just saw 7 months ago, you'll get to use your tax dollars to fix it, and to bail people out, and to pay for those businesses that, with the way the flooding is working now, businesses and homes that had no idea they were susceptible to flooding, but because we've so developed in the floodplain, now they are.
What was the opposition like last night? You were there, obviously, opposing this. Anybody else make any stinks? Any Bernie Sanders people making a stink, or anybody making a stink?
No, in fairness to Maryland Heights, they did say ahead of time that no public comment would be allowed, and they enforced that last night. There was no public comment allowed. Trying to be fair here, they do maintain that, and I'm sure they're right on this. They will have plenty of meetings going forward where they will take public comment.
Right.
But it was hard to get the people I talked with sitting in the crowd. The few people I spoke with were all opposed to the idea generally.
Right.
But does that mean everybody there was? I don't know.
You don't know. So what's the next step? How fast is this coming down the pike?
That remains to be seen. It doesn't seem to be moving too fast. The next step is another one of these workshops on August 9th.
Right.
And you can get all this information at the Maryland Heights Lake District website for this. August 9th at Maryland Heights again. Won't be another opportunity for public comment there either.
Right.
But then they'll have a series of planning commission and city council meetings. What they don't include here is when the St. Louis County TIF Commission comes into play, because that's not set yet.
Right.
So sometime this fall, the County TIF Commission will have a public hearing as well.
Right.
And according to Maryland Heights, they expect to make a final decision in January or so. But it's not a coincidence that this was all announced. To come down, it was originally planned to start shortly after the April elections, and it's designed to be finished before the next April election.
How about that?
That is not, in my opinion, a coincidence.
And just so we know on the record, Stan Kroenke is not building in a floodplain in California and not getting 1 cent of tax subsidies in California to build a football stadium.
Where he just took the football team.
Where he just took our football team to Los Angeles.
But we're going to make up for all the heartache Stan Kroenke's had to face over this and allow him to do both here in Maryland Heights.
We'll show him I'm not buying his hat, but we sure want to give him tax dollars to build in a floodplain. Unbelievable. David Stokes, you'll keep us abreast on this. We'd love to have you on the show.
I'd be delighted to. You can check out a lot of information at our Facebook page, Great Rivers Habitat Alliance. You can follow me on Twitter at David C. Stokes, and you can go to the website for Great Rivers Habitat, grha.org.
We should say that Great Rivers Habitat Alliance, one of the goals is to not build in a floodplain. Is that fair to say? Is that one of your jobs?
Absolutely. I mean, our primary role as a nonprofit now is to prevent unbridled, unstoppable floodplain development, which almost always involves heavy tax subsidies.
Right.
If people had to live with their own choices in doing this, they wouldn't do it. So they only do it because we make tax dollars subsidize it and take the risk away.
Right. I'll build in a floodplain just as long as when it gets floods, somebody else pays for it.
But both on the front end and on the back end.
Yeah, really interesting.
It's infuriating.
David Stokes, always a pleasure. Good to see you, my friend.
Thanks, McGraw.
726 here, Big 550.